All right. We got some people trickling in for our attendees. So a couple minutes past the top of the hour now, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're here today to talk about how to make YouTube ads work for software marketers. You know, I think YouTube for us at Metric Theory, and I think for some of our panelists here today, it's just been a really exciting ad channel that's been available for, you know, from a self-service perspective for years. But, you know, it's a difficult platform. It's very different than what you might be doing in social, what you might be doing with some of Google's other ad products and search, definitely. And, you know, a lot of brands that we've worked with have tried it. Maybe they didn't see the result that they wanted or didn't quite know how to track that result. Felt that they couldn't, you know, get a video that was high enough quality to really understand the performance. So we've developed some resources, including this webinar series, that hopefully can help to shine a light on how to make it work a little bit better for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Quick logistics before we meet our panel. We're going to do about a half hour of learning from our great panel. I'm going to ask some open format questions to the group for all my panelists. Not everyone has to answer everything, but if you have something to add, please feel free to jump in as soon as the first person who takes it is done. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to questions from our live attendees. So where we have those, we'll be taking those about the halfway mark, about the half hour mark, kind of depending on how many questions we are and how things are going. So for our attendees, in the bottom part of your Zoom application, you should see a little icon for Q&A. So if you just want to use that to pose your questions, we'll also check the chat, but primarily we'll be pulling from the Q&A widget for that. And then we'll be covering those in the second half hour. If the audience Q&A is light and we end up finishing off all of our questions, we have plenty to talk about with our panel too. Before the top of the hour, we might just finish a little bit early, and that's how things will go. So at close, we'll just leave you with a few closing thoughts and some next steps that everyone can take. All right. Well, that's enough out of me. I want to go ahead and introduce our panel that's joined us today. So here with us, we have Ken McDonald of TogetherWork. Ken is currently a general manager of the recreation and leisure business at TogetherWork, which is a SaaS and payments company. And at TogetherWork, he oversees 5 different companies. That's the way their model works, that serve the pet care, dance, rock climbing, and electronic waiver markets. Did I get that right, Ken?
Yep, that's right.
Great. So prior to TogetherWork, Ken helped to build 2 internet companies to over 10 million customers, and is also the author of a book called How to Acquire Your First Million Customers. So thank you, Ken. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We also have Cameron Solu of TechSmith. Cameron is the digital marketing strategy manager for TechSmith. TechSmith makes screen capture software. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with their products already, to help people share images and videos for training and everyday communication. He's been in digital marketing since 2014, running digital media plans for brands in both B2B and B2C space, and has run YouTube ads for most of that time. So welcome, Cameron.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then finally, we have Alyssa Codd from right here at Metric Theory. Alyssa is Metric Theory's Associate Director of Video and Search. She's been with Metric Theory for 6 years, building expertise in YouTube that entire time. So she's our lead expert in YouTube, developing content and training, working with some of the largest advertisers that we have on YouTube strategy and direct campaign management. Welcome, Alyssa.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and just to introduce myself, I'm Josh McClouse. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing at Metric Theory, just here to facilitate this conversation and ask questions. So, all right, so I want to go ahead and kick off with a little bit of background, and we can start with Ken and kind of go around the room. But if you could help the attendees out and just briefly talk about your backgrounds in YouTube advertising specifically. So what concepts you've used it for in the past.
Sure, and first, I think it's important to say, I mean, as you mentioned in my intro, I mean, I come at this a lot from a customer acquisition standpoint, having built a bunch of sites that have, reached millions of users and mobile apps to go along with that. So I think about it a lot from a lead gen perspective. I've been working with YouTube for about 7 years, both on a organic and a paid marketing side of things. I started with it, it was at TeamSnap, which is an app to manage your sports team or organization. And I've used it both on the B2B and B2C side, a whole range of different things. I mean, some of it very lead gen oriented and direct response, other kind of retargeting to trials, trying to move people through the funnel, a bunch of campaigns around cross sells and upsells. I'm actually doing some of that right now, where we're just trying to upsell customers to be more profitable. So really a kind of a range of different uses around YouTube.
Excellent. Thanks, Ken.
For me, it's pretty similar. I've run YouTube campaigns, for the past 6-7 years here, and it's been across a range of industries from automotive, consumer packaged goods, and now software. We use it for like Ken as well, a range of different objectives, whether that be awareness, prospecting, or lead gen. When it comes to retargeting, specifically, we'll talk about this a little bit later, I think, but we see a lot of really good success right now with a lot of our trial downloaders and reminding them of the product, and that's a big use of YouTube for me right now.
Excellent.
Great. And then like Josh mentioned, I've spent my career at Metric Theory really building up my YouTube expertise through working just with various colleagues, developing strategies for advertisers across all verticals, attending lots of trainings and workshops with Google, really being a thought leader for the agency. So my expertise is going to be primarily more on the tactical side. So really in-depth granular targeting and campaign formats, ads, and audiences.
All right. So it's just a little bit to orient everyone on who the panel is. But let's talk a little bit more about, this is a webinar specifically about using YouTube advertising for software marketers. And, I think there are a lot of people will think about YouTube as being very consumer oriented. There's a little bit of context from B2B and B2C from this group. So we're covering both of those, but from a software perspective. So I want to know, why do you think that YouTube is a good fit for software companies, or at least in your specific experience? Why don't we start with you, Cameron?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it all comes down to software being an extremely visual product. It's really hard to verbally explain features and benefits of something like a video editor, like we do here at TechSmith, as effectively as you could just show someone. YouTube is really good at doing that, whether it be with tutorials, whether it be with spotlights of features or use cases. And then also with the targeting that YouTube provides, really allows us to hone in on what I like to call the current mindset of the consumer. Comparing it to other forms of video advertising, YouTube allows us to dig in not only to demographic data or behavioral data, but also something like keyword data. What is someone searching for right now? What are they interested in right now? Are they on YouTube for a cat video, or are they on YouTube for something more educational or to expand their knowledge about a certain topic? We can dig into that with YouTube layered in on top of demographic and behavioral information, and really show a visual of our software, whether it be to someone brand new or someone who maybe downloaded a trial and hasn't purchased yet. Reminding them how easy it is to use the product and the benefits of it. Really useful, or really, really easy to do on YouTube.
Mine's pretty similar to Cameron's. I mean, I think it starts with the size of the audience. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming. Everybody's on there, and then the targeting is really interesting. And for me, one of the really interesting moments was, I've been a basketball coach for many, many years, and that was the audience for TeamSnap was sports coaches, and I've been going, for my annual kind of check into the start of basketball season, and they kind of get the coaches set up and train them. And I went one year, and they pretty much canceled most of it. It just basically got condensed down to just signing the paperwork. And I asked the guy why they weren't running the hands-on drills, and he said, It's all YouTube. It's all everybody uses. And it dawned on me, I was like, wow, if other organizations are doing the same thing, and I knew that they were, I was like, that's where I'm going to go find my prospects, is right there. I think the other thing, and Cameron touched on this too, is the visual side of it. We get a lot of feedback that people don't read, but they will watch a video. And definitely at TeamSnap, that was doubly true, because you had an audience that was very sports oriented and sort of used to going to YouTube to watch sports videos. So it was a particularly good fit in that regard.
And just to build on that, I've talked to several people, and I get the impression that people think that YouTube, is a good fit for certain verticals. Like, oh, YouTube only has a bunch of music videos and beauty tutorials and cat videos. My B2B audience isn't going to be on there. And I firmly believe that's not true. I think Ken's example right now just spoke to that a little bit, but there's so much content on software tutorials and demos and how-to videos and product reviews. And that's exactly the type of content that a decision maker would be watching to help them make a decision. And using that targeting that both Cameron and Ken talked about, that's how you reach those people when they're watching those really relevant videos.
Yeah, Ken, that's an amazing story and example, a real life example of how that works. I think, for those of people who are attending this or watching it later, thinking about how to maybe kind of change the mindset if you're trying to convince people internally to use YouTube. It's small anecdotal stories like that I think can sometimes move the needle to get the budget to try something. And I think a good kind of next step to go to would be to dive right into what's an example of how YouTube kind of proved this out to everyone here. What's an example of a campaign that's worked particularly well for you in the past or currently, performance-wise? And maybe we can start with Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to kind of coming off that example I mentioned of the basketball coaches. I mean, we then went and set up some campaigns. Really, it was really timed around the start of sports seasons for different sports. And we actually, I think, as I recall, we started with baseball, but it was like right at the beginning of baseball season in certain geos, we would go target people who were searching for like youth baseball training videos. And I mean, our perspective was if they were searching for those keywords, it was a very high likelihood that they were a good quality prospect. And definitely both the brand awareness survey that we ran with Google and Alyssa, and then the conversion data was very, very strong on those campaigns. And we ran a couple different variants of it. I mean, we had some explainer videos that we ended up kind of really tailoring to certain audiences, having an explainer video, just one for baseball, one for lacrosse, et cetera. And then later we sort of did another cut of that where we used more kind of cinema quality videos that were a little more thematic and less trying to walk through the product. But, in both cases, we just thought both the conversion data and the brand awareness, and actually even more importantly, one other aspect of it was just, you would talk to customers and like at trade shows or in person or on customer calls. And one of the most amazing parts was that they would just so many times come back to, yeah, I got started when I saw that video. I saw that video and it just like really clicked for me. And like hearing like literally hundreds and hundreds of customers say that made me realize, wow, this YouTube advertising is probably having a much bigger impact than we're really giving it credit for.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to get into attribution and some of that stuff later, which I know you have a lot of experience with, but anyone else thoughts on campaigns that stood out for them?
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to what Ken said, just the idea that someone remembered a YouTube video, I don't hear that about paid search ads very often. So I mean, it's the visual nature of video, not just on YouTube, just overall, but YouTube specifically. When people are in that mindset, it's a very memorable experience for them. But right now, something that we've had really good success with at TechSmith for both of our core Snagit and Camtasia products would be remarketing users of our trial, like I mentioned earlier. Really honing in on some of the key features of the products. And with some internal product surveys and data that we have, we can understand what people came to the product looking to do. And we can retarget those users specifically with features, with walkthroughs, with use cases on YouTube, kind of, re-explaining the benefits, letting them know that, hey, your trial might be up, but this product was really instrumental in helping you get your project done, or help you save some time during the day. And just showing them that again, helping them remember how easy it was to use the product and what the experience was like. Really good conversion data coming out of those campaigns for both products too. And it's hard to compare them to real quick here, is because Snagit and Camtasia, very different price points, very different products for us. One's a little bit more basic, one's a little bit bigger of an investment. And regardless of the product, it's funny to see that we see a really good amount of conversions on YouTube, regardless of that price point. It just depends on, again, I'm going to probably say this all day, but the mindset of the user, understanding where they are in the funnel, where they are in their purchase decision, can really help, and YouTube helps us do that.
Yeah. Those are great points. I think that it's really common from our experience for advertisers to kind of dip their toes in the water with YouTube and kind of try a video, right? And if they don't see, what they're hoping to see, or kind of some initial traction, maybe they just kind of deprioritize it. But the notion of, really actually understanding where your audience is in the phone, kind of matching the messaging, that's, a big unlock. So it's definitely a big takeaway. Yeah. Alyssa, do you have any other examples?
Yeah, I can add another example here. I wanted to speak a little bit about custom intent audiences and some success I saw with that for another software company that does financial planning. And they used custom intent audiences during their peak season, and they had really specific audiences for specific groups of keywords. And for those that don't know, custom intent works by targeting people based on what they've actually searched for on Google in the last 7 days. So using those really specific audiences, people that have been searching for these really related terms, and then serving them a video that was only about 15 seconds long, just an explainer video, but had some really great, shots of the product in it, really great value propositions. That was really successful. I mean, this was a prospecting campaign to brand new people, and it had performance very similar to their non-brand campaigns during that period.
Wow, awesome. All right, so let's get a little bit more into the details. And Ken, you brought this up a little bit when you talked about, having to talk with customers, but how has everyone here tracked the impact of YouTube ads when it comes to kind of justifying the spend, showing ROI, maybe beyond what you get in the Google Ads interface, which might have some issues where it's not able to track everything. But what data have you used or pointed to show the impact of YouTube campaigns you've run?
Yeah, I guess I could start. I think the starting place obviously is the Google Ads interface, and then I've used, Google Analytics, built out a homegrown attribution engine, did some work with an ad server to kind of look at things that were outside of the attribution window that Google Ads uses, worked with Google to correlate YouTube ads to paid search traffic. That all said, I think to me, a lot of this got a lot trickier when GDPR came out and it became harder to track people across different platforms. I mean, you just see people kind of bounce across different ad platforms so much that at that point, we really refocused on two main vehicles. One is incrementality, basically A/B testing by geo. So we would turn on YouTube ads in one place, or another case, we turned off YouTube ads across all of Canada, which was a very strong market for us to see what the impact would be there. And then we're looking for the incremental uplift from leaving ads on or turning ads on in a geo. I mean, to me, that's kind of the gold standard if you can execute on that. I do think the brand awareness surveys that Google and YouTube will help you run, those can be really effective as well, just to get a different kind of read on how things are going. And then, as we talked about earlier, I think, you know, I don't put a huge amount on it, but I think that qualitative side above and beyond sometimes can be really interesting. I mean, we had a number of the ads that we ran that like would show up, like when we do a press release, they go on to YouTube, find those ads, and they really like those ads so much that they would then publish them in the article that they wrote about us. You know, when you see that happen, you're like, wow, that's just like a whole other, you know, that must be pretty effective if, you know, some publication is going and grabbing that video.
Yeah, definitely. If I could kind of ask a follow-up there, the geo testing and incrementality testing, we actually have, I think Alyssa wrote a little bit about that for our blog. So for attendees, if you want more information on running one of those, you can just go search our blog for incrementality testing and check that out. But Ken, I'm curious, when you ran that test, do you happen to remember like what the impact was, or kind of some of the takeaways that you had from doing that type of geo testing?
I mean, there were a lot of, we ran a number of those. I think, you know, one of the things that came out was that sometimes the impact wasn't quite where you might expect it. So like I mentioned that one case where we turned off the ads in Canada, and it was interesting that, you know, on one hand, like, and we were very far down in terms of penetrating that market at that point. So turning off the ads didn't have as big an impact on lead gen because so many people knew about us, but it was interesting that kind of the usage dropped off, the repeat purchases dropped off, the churn went up, those sort of things that we hadn't been, we were coming at it with such a lead gen mindset that when we looked at the numbers and saw that it was more, the existing users were kind of going away faster, that was really kind of eye-opening because I hadn't really thought about YouTube's impact in driving that.
Yeah, fascinating. Cameron?
Yeah. I mean, just to build off that, it doesn't matter what you go into a campaign thinking. YouTube has a tendency to have other kind of hidden effects. It's something I've noticed as well when it comes to helping keep your product top of mind with consumers. Even if your campaign is optimized for conversions, it's all about lead gen. People still use those videos to remember your brand, to stay cognizant of your brand, regardless of your intent with it. But yeah, that's an interesting test. And I'm just going to piggyback off Ken. I mean, he mentioned pretty much everything that I would have. Incrementality is huge because, as we all know, all these interfaces in the world, you know, they can have all the numbers you want, but really understanding the impact of your ads comes down to turning them off and comparing to what they do to somewhere with them on. Understanding how your audience reacts to changes like that, to me is more valuable than a lot of the data you can get from the platforms, whether that be YouTube, Google, or Google Analytics. But on the more technical side, I mean, it's all UTM parameters on all of our links. It's utilizing some of the more advanced reporting within Google Analytics to track customer journeys and understand where YouTube falls maybe in their journey, whether it's kind of the beginning point of them discovering our brand, or it's more at the end or middle point, kind of ushering them towards a conversion. That's really interesting to understand as well. So yeah, all the features you can pull out of Google Analytics, the better.
Yeah, I would definitely echo the points on incrementality testing. I've seen that be really insightful for a lot of advertisers. And then especially when you run that in conjunction with a brand lift study, that's what Ken mentioning. I think having that insight, that concrete insight from the incrementality test that turning ads off here drove this many less conversions, or turning them on drove this many more conversions, in combination with the brand lift metrics that tell you, oh, we saw a 30% lift in brand awareness from running these videos. Those two things in conjunction can a lot of times help build a really strong case. And then other than that, this is a metric that's in the platform, but I feel like view through conversions are often forgotten for YouTube. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how important view-through conversions are. Because if somebody watches part of your video and then goes on to convert within 1 day, which is the default window for a view-through conversion, and this is a person that has never been to your website before and is a new customer, you can say with some level of confidence that that YouTube view played a part in that conversion path. So those view-through conversions should not be ignored, and they should be counted in your conversion total, at least in some form, to look at the full impact.
Yeah, yeah. And do you see how would you go about setting that up for an advertiser? Not like in the the literal sense, but in terms of valuing those view-through conversions. What have you done in the past, Alyssa?
Mm-hmm. I've seen people give them half credit. That's been pretty common. It's not going to be perfect, right? We're never going to know like this is the exact value of a view-through conversion. But the point is that it's going to be better than giving them no credit at all. So it's a little bit of a business decision, but half credit can be a good halfway step. And then, yeah, more technically, you can set up a calculation for that in the interface to actually calculate it that way for your conversions.
I just add on, I mean, this is a little bit more of an advanced maneuver, but the more you set up, like we set up an ad server that could pick up those view-through conversions and really kind of look at the whole life cycle, kind of along with, we also did like basically an in-house attribution engine. And there, because we really knew what steps were coming before and after, it was easier to come up with a more exact approach than just say a rubric like 50% or third of view throughs. I mean, like especially if we knew that it was a branded search that came afterwards, we were like, all right, we're going to give that a much higher percentage than other things. But again, that's not sort of definitely a more advanced maneuver doing that kind of stuff, and takes quite a bit of time to set it up.
And were you using was it Display and Video 360, Google's ad server for that? Do you remember, Ken?
No, it was a different ad server. I'm blanking on which one we were using at the time. I mean, my experience is most of them can get you there. You just have to have basically the data science chops to figure out how to interpret the data.
Sure. Everyone could use more data scientists, right?
Absolutely.
And was that something that you felt like was impacted by GDPR? Any kind of impression data that you might have gotten from ad servers? Did you see the value of that go down over the course of the time that you were using it, or was that something that stayed valuable?
It did, because fewer and fewer other platforms outside of the Google properties were we able to run those tags. We've just found it harder to place those tags. But in our case, because we were doing so much with YouTube, we wanted, and because we felt like the attribution window was so long, and I think there's actually a question, there's sort of not to jump to it, but there's sort of a question around that. We felt it was important to get in there and be able to track people, even if it wasn't going to be in 1 day or 3 days or whatever Google's attribution window was at that time. Just we had a certain seasonality to the product when it was a Team Snap that meant that a lot of people were going to take far longer, sometimes months, to convert. Yeah.
That's a good call out. We do have a question, and since it's the only one so far, we'll go ahead and just take this one now, and then get back into the other set of questions that we had. But the question from one of our attendees is, how do you convince decision makers to start to invest in YouTube or continue to invest in YouTube when the attribution window for YouTube can be longer on average versus, in this case, she brought up a paid search ad. How do you successfully argue that YouTube gets results if that's the case?
A couple of things come to mind for me. One, assuming this attribution window isn't longer than the 90 days, that the max that we can set Google Ads for, setting the conversion pixel to be at the 90-day window, even if your search conversions are a lot shorter, will give you more insight into the YouTube conversions that may take longer. and that maybe you're not getting insight into right now if your conversion window is set to a much shorter period. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that comes to mind is that it's really important to give YouTube the time for the conversions. We usually call it like fully baking, or for the conversions to backfill after the interaction, like the video view happens. So keeping in mind that a path to conversion for a YouTube video viewer might take 7 days, might take 14 days, when a search converter might only take 1 or 2 days. So making sure to look at the data, keeping that in mind, anything, if your path to conversion on YouTube is 7 days long, anything within the last 7 days isn't going to be fully accurate, because there's going to be more conversions that are going to be attributed to those days. Otherwise, I think the other things we've talked about also kind of get at this. The incrementality testing definitely helps with this, regardless of the attribution window, but you do need to make sure to give time after the test for the data to fully fill in based on how long it takes someone to convert. And then also, I think something we haven't talked about yet, doing big pushes on YouTube can also be beneficial to fill your remarketing cookie pools that then you can use to target with other channels. So that's another thing to look at too. You know, if we invest a bunch of money in YouTube for this big push, how are our remarketing campaigns doing? Not only our Google remarketing campaigns, but what about, you know, our social ones, our Facebook ones? We're seeing more impressions from those, more conversions, because we have a larger pool.
Yeah.
To build off that real quick too, and much more of a less technical manner, is I completely agree with the incrementality testing. In my experience, you know, talking to higher ups, talking to anyone who's invested or a stakeholder in these campaigns, it can almost kind of seem like a give and take when you mention an incrementality test as maybe something to convince them that this is working, because it you know, just in its name, it allows you to free up some budget, allows you to spend a little bit less, just, you know, on paper, but it's also going to provide a lot of really good data for you to back up your claim that YouTube is working. Pick a city here, pick a city there, turn off in one city. Save some money for the time being, but like Alyssa said, make sure you give it enough time for the backfill of the conversions to come in, for the true comparison to fully bake there. But incrementality tests for me personally have been a very good way of kind of pitching a middle ground when someone is maybe not convinced of YouTube, or not fully understanding the results we're getting, or understanding the impact, again, as Alyssa said, on our retargeting pool. How are we really re-engaging with these users? Well, incrementality can help show that. And also, you know, not just using YouTube, having a full media mix to help support each other. YouTube supports remarketing, and remarketing helps finish off those YouTube leads. So it's a full circle. It's a full environment, and yeah.
I think +1 to both of those answers. The only thing I'd add is just, and this answer comes from a guy who really likes to see conversion data and doesn't put as much value in the brand lift, studies, relatively speaking. I do think that the brand lift studies can actually give you a early read on the conversion data. I mean, those are highly correlated. If you run a brand lift survey and people have never heard of your brand after you've run the ads, you ain't going to see any conversions, most likely, right? So it can be a way, and this might be less or more for you to convince yourself, as opposed to if you're going to try and convince a boss who's skeptical of this. But, you know, it can be a good quick read that happens very, very quickly, that, hey, you're on the right path, that those ads cut through the noise and people are remembering you. I had times where we ran the brand lift surveys afterwards, and all they remembered in the market was our competitors. And I knew with high likelihood that those were going to be poor converting campaigns. And then we had some where the results were kind of the opposite. And sure enough, those were the best converting campaigns.
Yeah.
Those studies can be really good leading indicators for sure.
Yeah, that's well said.
Yeah. So a lot of really great, I think, things to take away and think about when it comes to making that case. Everything from, you know, if you have more advanced attribution, making sure that you're using it to its full potential. You know, things like Google Analytics, which can do deeper tracking in terms of being able to show how it fits into the user journey. then, you know, simpler things like just the idea of running it and making sure that you're accounting for things like remarketing performance afterward in the wake of running YouTube ads, traffic, direct traffic, that kind of thing. You know, it doesn't cost any more money to do that. And, you know, you'll be able to, you know, to see more of the total performance. All right, well, we can keep going with some of our own questions, no more from the audience just right now. So seasonality in YouTube is something that we see a lot, and a lot of times it's heading into Q4, and a lot of advertisers want to try to run YouTube ads in preparation for something like that. But in the course of our conversations, both Cameron and Ken had direct experience with how seasonality impacted YouTube campaigns, or how they thought about running YouTube with seasonality. So would we like to kind of tackle how you've used it in that respect? Maybe Cameron, if you want to talk about your experience there.
Absolutely. Yeah, YouTube is a really good platform for reaching the masses, as Ken has mentioned previously. The reach is massive on the platform. So we really utilize it during Cyber Monday. Cyber Monday every year is one of our biggest discounts for our TechSmith products, and really short, sweet bumper videos to just convey the sale to a lot of our trial downloaders. We use it primarily for remarketing, whether it be you know, website visitors or those trial downloaders who haven't converted yet, to convey the sale, convey the brand image, just stay top of mind again, let them know that, hey, if you were thinking about purchasing, now's the time. Using that with a very short, simple message has been a very efficient way of us converting on those users.
Yeah, I'll go back to the, you know, TeamSnap examples again. I mean, that company had really like some of the most wicked seasonality I've ever seen. I mean, you've got every sport's played at a different time of year, and it's different in different parts of the country. You play soccer at a different time of year in Toronto versus, say, Phoenix. Phoenix, you typically play in the middle of the winter. And even more than that, weather can play an impact. You know, we're here in Colorado, you have a snowy spring, and, you know, soccer season can easily be pushed out 2-3 weeks. And that's a product, you know, at TeamSnap that people sign up right in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. And if you don't get them then, you know, they're kind of done. So you kind of miss your opportunity to sign them up until the next year or next season. You know, we put, again, a lot of analytical horsepower into trying to figure out that seasonality and figure out what was happening in different sports and different geos. That said, I think one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, and I know Google has been certainly pushing on it, is the machine learning. I'd love to get to a point where that kind of thing, instead of having a room full of data scientists, you know, instead you just turn the machine learning loose and have it figure out, you know, exactly when people buy your product in a certain market, you know, under certain conditions.
I would also add, not only is YouTube valuable during the high season or during a promotion, but leading up to it as well. It's really important to consider using YouTube to raise awareness of, you know, whatever's upcoming, whether it's peak season, whether it's going to be an upcoming sale. Building up that awareness beforehand will help people remember your brand when it comes time to be peak season. They'll think, oh yeah, I need this new software. Oh, I did hear about this one on YouTube because I saw, you know, several ads for it, and then they'll be more likely to consider it if they see another ad. And then also, like we've talked about, building up that remarketing is really important too. So by running those ads leading up to a big peak season, you can build up those remarketing cookie pools that then you can use to retarget during the high seasonality.
Yeah, that's something I neglected to mention. We do that at TechSmith as well. I mean, pretty much the entire month of November for us leading up to Cyber Monday is a ramp up period, and not just on YouTube, but it's everywhere, just to make sure that we have the highest level of brand awareness that we can get, and the highest amount of qualified, cookie pools that we can gather in order to retarget them during Cyber Monday. but yeah, we definitely don't just start, you know, guns blazing on Cyber Monday. There's a prep period for sure. It's very important to make sure, because you know, cookies only last for a certain amount of time. You can't just say, oh, I've spent all year building my audience. It really just matters what you've done past 30, 60, 90 days, depending on regulations. And that's something that we have really started to grow out a full, comprehensive, just November of every year plan for TechSmith.
So I want to kind of switch gears, good discussion about seasonality, and talk about something that I think is for a lot of marketers that are getting into YouTube, one of the more intimidating parts of it, which is making video ads. I think everyone has you know, their own kind of specific struggles with that part of the process. So in your experience with the video ads that you've made, maybe you can help to save our audience a little bit of time. What have you seen work well with video ad creative? You can talk, you know, both kind of generally, what have you seen, you know, really resonate with audiences, and then also specific to direct response, if there's any kind of like direct response tips that our audience can take away. Yeah.
For me on mine, I know Ken has some really good examples of difference in like cinematic different production levels that he's seen work. But for our software, the videos that we see work are flexible videos, if that makes any sense. It's a video that is not as granular as focusing on just one feature or one use case. It's a video that is able to be used in multiple ways. And with YouTube's you know, feature set around call to actions, around CTAs, being able to change end cards and videos, or the accompanying banner with the video, being able to repurpose different video creatives for different objectives has been a way that we can stay efficient in our production. But when it all comes down to what is the most effective video for TechSmith, it's when we are able to match up the messaging within the video and the call to action that we are applying at the end of the video or in the accompanying banner to the user who is watching it. Being able to understand their customer journey, understand their mindset, the word I love to use this hour, and understanding where they are in their buying phase. Just what are they looking for at that certain amount of time, and being able to serve them a video that answers that, addresses their pain points, is key. So staying flexible with those videos, having some that kind of run the gamut and are able to be swapped with maybe end cards or different conversions, actions, or call to actions, has been very efficient for us.
I'd build in, I think sometimes tailoring that message, even sometimes if it's just a little bit of imagery or a few words or something like that, it's amazing the impact difference it can have. I mean, my biggest piece of advice around this topic of creative is don't try and guess, just test, measure, learn, and don't go like, think you got to go bananas with the super expensive ad as the first one. Sometimes the really inexpensive ads actually are the best performing. You know, we had a number of times where the team internally was dead convinced that a certain ad was just going to kill it. And I remember one time in particular where we had two in-house ads that people just thought were great. And then they had another ad that we created, and we just needed a baseline in the brand lift study. So we threw that in, and the two that people were convinced were going to crush it and they'd spent all this time on, it was zero brand lift on. And the other creative was amazing. It just had this like better than you could ever expect in terms of the brand lift capability. And the team just kept going back to Google saying your brand lift survey is broken. We reran it like 2 more times and it showed the same exact thing. So, you know, try some stuff, try very different concepts, different lengths, and see, you know, what the data tell you what works.
And for that example, Ken, do you remember what the video was like that the internal team really thought was going to be the winner, and what the one was like that actually ended up winning out?
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't take too much stock in this because I think every company is different. But you know, in this particular case, they were animated the videos that didn't go well were animated, humorous videos serving a B2B market. And our hypothesis was that the humor just didn't match. It was actually a very serious aspect of the product, you know, around money and, you know, kind of staying safe, and that people didn't want to see humor, that just didn't match well. And then the video, and there were actually a couple of videos that did quite well. They were, as Cameron said, they were cinematic quality, you know, really, you know, much more high-end videos. And even though that there wasn't like this real like call to action with them, people remembered the videos because they were just so well done and they were really engaging.
Yeah. So in that case, actually putting up and you know, maybe going for the higher production value did work out and was worth it in the end.
And in that one it
Always have
did,
to
but
be
there
the
were
case.
other times where I spent literally like $600 on videos that were not that different than, they were basically like a fancy animated GIF, and they were great. So, you know, sometimes you just got to try it. I think for different types of campaigns, different things work well. And I'm just a big believer of trying to have different types of creative and test them against each other.
Testing. Definitely.
Yeah, the idea of you get what you pay for definitely holds some weight here. But
Okay.
in my experience, just like Ken, it really comes down to the mindset that you reach your user in and how they respond to the message and how it's targeted at them. It can be a $600, you know, fancy GIF, but it can resonate with them. It can hit them where they are in the funnel. It can hit them where they are in their decision making process in a way that, you know, a Michael Bay clip on YouTube, that level of production value, maybe it just their eyes kind of glaze over. You know, it doesn't necessarily matter how beautiful the video is. It's the messaging, it's the call to action, and it's that targeting. That's what it comes down to.
Sure.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with the testing mentality as well. Just I think people want to know, like, what's the best video I can make? Like, tell me what exactly should go into it, what's going to work for me. And it's really hard to know that because different things are going to work for different companies. So definitely agree with that. That being said, we do have a great framework at Metric Theory for direct response videos. It's Captivate, Relate, Associate. So no matter what type of video you're creating, whether it's a $600 animated GIF or a really expensive cinematic quality video, that framework is really good to start with. And it's Captivate is like getting your audience's attention right at the beginning with, you know, voiceover or catchy music or whatever it is. Relating is relating to your audience. So whatever their needs are, their mindset is, as Cameron would say, really relating to that with the messaging. And then associate is associating your brand as the solution, so making sure to really get that branding in there. We recommend trying to get as much of that as possible into the first, 6 or 7 seconds of the video. It's pretty tricky, but the more you can get, the more you can get right at the beginning, the better, because your audience is going to see that first. And even if they skip, they'll still get that main messaging.
We just had one more thought on creative, which is just, I think as people who are new to YouTube, one of the things I see all the time is they want to jump to like the fanciest live action videos, this huge cast, and, you know, the direct costs tend to be pretty high. But even if you get a really good production company, the part that you fail to recognize is like how much work it takes on you, like, you know, reviewing the actors to make sure that the actors actually look like they, you know, are real for the part, reviewing the venues. I've had actually when I've done live action, a bunch of issues where the venue is not quite right and would just throw the whole video off. So almost everybody I talk to who is like new to YouTube, that's where they pivot to immediately is live action. And I would just say, like, live action, it can be awesome, but it is really hard. So definitely plan for it to be not an easy way to put your foot in the door.
Yeah. All great insights. I'm going to jump really quick to this audience question. So we did get one more in. And then we will kind of look toward a little bit of kind of closing statements since we're coming up at the top of the hour. So the question is, as digital marketing moves toward a cookieless future, and with CCPA starting officially enforcement tomorrow, I think this is a very apt question. How do you think YouTube's effectiveness in that cookieless future as a marketing channel will change? How do you think its effectiveness will change? So anyone can jump in with their first thought.
This is a good question. Definitely an interesting thought. My first thought went to that the effectiveness of it isn't going to change, but the measurement of it will change.
Okay.
I think it will still be effective in the sense that, you know, we can still use a lot of the targeting methods to reach a highly qualified audience. Obviously, remarketing will be more difficult in a cookieless future. But the measurement would become more difficult if we can't, you know, there's less and less conversions we can tie directly back to YouTube. And I think in that case, it's going to become more of, well, first it's going to become more of, we need to trust that this marketing channel, like with the really accurate targeting or, you know, really robust targeting and then a really strong video, we're getting in front of a good audience and there's value in that. And there has to be some level of trust there beyond what you can directly see. So there's that. And then I think that there's also going to need to be a little bit more like directional measurement and not as exact. So things like incrementality tests, like that's all directional measurement of like, we put this investment in this channel, how does our business as a whole change for, you know, that city or that state when we do that, and relying a little bit more on that directional data rather than exacts.
I completely agree. My whole idea of the measurement that I was thinking was the incrementality. I mean, that's a piece of measurement that you can directly control yourself. You're not relying on really anyone else for that analysis or that data. You choose to run ads here and not here, or change something here and not here, and you can directly see the impact of those choices in your results. So measurement definitely will have to be adjusted a bit from the norm. But like Alyssa said, a lot of the really effective micro-targeting that we are able to do on YouTube shouldn't be affected. Some of the keyword searching, some of the data that consumers are willingly, you know, sharing, they are searching online, and understanding that we can still generally match a lot of that back to these consumers, even in a cookieless world, is something that will still keep YouTube effective in my mind.
Yeah, I completely agree with those. And I think on the targeting side, you know, it's funny, I remember when GDPR was coming out, there were similar concerns of like, oh my gosh, targeting is gonna, you know, we'll lose all these things. And, you know, it's always, I feel like this whole digital marketing world, it's always like, it's always changing. It's one step forward, one step back as things change and as people are more cognizant of privacy concerns. So I think like on the targeting side, there will just be other ways to target customers that will be particularly effective, and Google in particular is pretty amazing with all the different things that they are continually coming up with.
Yeah, it's possible because YouTube is a Google product, right? That in terms of effectiveness with you know, cookie loss and the rules around cookie loss, one of the things that I think analysts don't expect to change very much is how the walled gardens like Google, like Facebook, how their targeting is actually impacted. So hopefully with that being the case, I mean, you know, I guess we'll all have to see as that really, you know, browsers start to change in the future a little bit more. But, you know, I think it being Google, that gives you a little bit more confidence, I think, that the targeting is going to stay relatively effective compared to what it is now.
Google's not one to go down without a fight.
That's well said.
That's the way to say it.
Facebook's good at that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap up. So kind of a little bit related to you know, that question and the future of video. You know, I think right now a lot of marketing organizations are running on tighter budgets, moving more spend to the quote, the things that work, right? Which is why I think we got a lot of questions around how do you prove the value and you know, what attribution are you using and all that. So I guess first kind of two-part question, would you still advise investing in YouTube this year, considering that that's the case? And how do you view, the significance of video in a advertising mix for digital marketers for the rest of this year and moving forward? What's your outlook?
Yeah, I can take that one first. It's definitely going to still be included this year in TechSmith's media mix. If anything, we are probably going to increase our spend. I know right now we're currently going through the process of trying to refresh our creatives, trying to create more variations for A/B testing, for incrementality testing, using some of the features that YouTube has. They have a beta out for actually building videos a little bit easier than going through the whole production process. So we want to take advantage of that. But overall, I mean, video advertising in general is something that's here to stay. I don't see it going away or diminishing really in any regard. Especially with what everyone's going through right now. I mean, videos on online video, people are turning to those more so than really they ever have right now. In the situation we're currently in, people are at home. People are online more than they have been in the past. And their presence there has done nothing but increase, if not just stay the same. And it's something that allows marketers like us to kind of keep the boat steady with those type of platforms, even when everything else kind of seems like it's on fire. So being able to visually promote our products is still very important. Giving people a feel of how they are to use cases that they can be used in, how they can help improve their work or their lives from an efficiency standpoint. Still very visual. Paid search works really well for us for kind of closing leads, but letting people understand what TechSmith is and how it feels to use our products is key in our media mix, and YouTube is a massive part of that. So TechSmith specifically absolutely will be continuing, simply just because of what's going on right now, and we want to refresh our videos. YouTube's the best place to test those there.
Ken, what are your thoughts there? I know you talk to a lot of marketers and give out a lot of advice.
Yeah, I mean, we're still absolutely running YouTube ads. I think you just have to be very aware of the mindset of the customers. I mean, we've found times through COVID where people were actually they had more time, unfortunately, to evaluate products. And then other times where maybe they're more interested in features that help them through COVID, and so that maybe there's more opportunity to educate existing customers or cross-sell or upsell them about how they can use your product, through this time. I think longer term, I'm particularly bullish about YouTube and video ads. I mean, I think, the audience of YouTube isn't going anywhere. It's massive. The amount of videos watched is huge. And I think the targeting is just going to get better. And I talked about this a little bit before, but I'm particularly interested to see where machine learning goes with it. I think right now, the best campaigns, being really good on the analytics helps you optimize your campaigns, and the more we can sort of democratize that by using machine learning to just more quickly figure out what's working, what's resonating with people, I think video advertising will just become more and more effective.
Yeah, the last thing I would add there too is that I see a lot of advertisers who YouTube is like one of the first things they want to cut when things get rocky, because I think it doesn't work. But in my opinion, it's not like that we need to cut YouTube because it doesn't work. It's we need to change our mindset about like, how does YouTube work? How is it contributing? Make it into one of the things that do work by looking at it a different way. What I mean by that is that when we look at it individually as a channel, sure, it's going to have a higher CPA or a lower ROI than like a search campaign or something like that. But that's not the full picture. Like we've talked about, we need to be considering holistic marketing plan wise. Like this spend on YouTube is introducing our brand to a new audience, and then it's driving, more brand searches. It's driving more remarketing, and holistically contributing to our goals. So that's kind of my big thought on that, is getting out of that mindset of like looking at YouTube like in that narrow view, like just this channel is working, and more looking at it as part of the larger mix and how it plays a role.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to leave it, right? It is about perspective, because if you think about it as like a top of funnel channel that you can cut, right? And you're just kind of thinking about the funnel as just like things where you're just kind of moving everything down to the farthest reaches of the bottom, rather than, you know, not still pay attention to each part of the funnel and make sure that your mix is still complete, despite the fact that, you know, everyone's going to be working, I think, on limited budgets just because of the business constraints that we have right now. Yeah.
That's one thing too, personally, that, I mean, I know that I've grown on over the years, is understanding that cutting something, in this example, like YouTube, isn't just, you know, cutting it because it's not working, or cutting it to save money. You actually could be shrinking your funnel. I mean, it's not just removing it from that little section, as we all kind of visualize that funnel in our minds. It's not just, you know, pulling things out of it. A lot of times that chunk can just go away. If YouTube has been a large part of feeding the lower parts of the funnel in the past, cutting it or reducing spend there can really hinder your efforts further down the funnel. So like Alyssa said, it may have a lower directly attributable ROI or a higher CPA, but removing it, and, you know, this could be an incrementality test like we've mentioned, but removing it, you will start to see some negative effects down the funnel and on your, you know, really efficient paid search campaigns or your really efficient retargeting campaigns on other platforms. It's very likely they'll start to take a hit. So understanding, again, Alyssa said, it's a holistic system. It's called a media mix for a reason. It's a mix of things that really intermingle together.
Yeah. Well, okay, I think that's a good place for us to leave today's discussion. I want to thank all of our attendees for attending live and asking questions. We hope that it was useful. Really want to thank all of our contributors for appearing on the panel today and lending their thoughts and their time. So we're going to be following up with the recording, and we encourage people to kind of share it with others and be on the lookout for our future webinars. For our panelists, if attendees want to ask follow-up questions, is there a way that they can reach you privately with other stuff?
Yeah, personally, I'm on LinkedIn, and I mean, reach out via email, C.Solu, my last name, SOLU, @techsmith.com. I'd be happy to chat.
Great. Thanks, Cameron.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn's probably the easiest way for people. I mean, you're also welcome to use email as well, kmcdonald@togetherwork.com, but LinkedIn's usually a good way to know who you are and check out your profile, so I know, you know, kind of your context when you're reaching out to me.
Yeah.
Yep, same. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, or my email is just alyssa@metrictheory.com.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, we'll be sharing this with everyone, and also our new guide, a performance marketer's guide to YouTube. That's going to have a lot more in-depth info on the topic for everyone to get a little bit more insight from. But thanks once again, and we'll see you soon, hopefully. Bye, everybody.